Hey everyone, the Moto G line has always been about bringing down the most important features to a low price. With the Moto G7, this tradition continues amidst a ton of competition. Does the phone actually offer enough for it to deserve your hard-earned cash? Or should you look elsewhere? I'm Andrew for GSM Arena, and this is our Moto G7 review. The Moto G7 is comfortable in the hand, and it's even possible to use one-handed without too much trouble. All the buttons are in the right place, and there aren't any missing features. For example, there's only 64GB of onboard storage, but there's an expandable card slot. On the bottom of the phone, you'll even find a USB-C port and a headphone jack. Turn the phone over, and Motorola's classic design language pretty much screams at you. You'll find the classic circular camera bump with two cameras and an LED flash inside it that resembles a little face. If that's not enough motive for you, there's also a logo on the fingerprint reader. Speaking of which, the reader is a decently fast one and nicely placed, so no disappointments here. There's also Face Unlock if you prefer, although it won't be as secure. Like last year, both the front and the back of the phone are made of Gorilla Glass 3, and the phone is splash-proof. Protection aside, I think it's better to use a case with this phone even if you're not prone to klutziness. First, the mirror-like finish on the back loves collecting slimy fingerprints. Second, with the case on, the phone lies flat and doesn't wobble quite as much. Third, it's much less slippery. As a whole, the phone has an elegant design, but it plays it a bit too safe, especially when you contrast it with all the gradient eye candy on competing mid-rangers like the Realme 3. On the front, you'll find a 6.2-inch IPS LCD panel with a tall 19:9 aspect ratio and a rather deep water droplet notch. It has a full HD resolution and a good pixel density, so icons and text don't look smudgy. That said, the phone doesn't have the most accurate colors, and in any mode you choose, you'll have slightly bluish whites. Sunlight legibility is pretty average as far as LCDs go, although surprisingly it has both a slightly higher maximum brightness than the Moto G7 Plus and a better contrast ratio. However, if you care more about the stereo speakers, you're gonna have to go with the Plus, as the regular G7 only has a single downward-facing loudspeaker. It's a couple of decibels short of having excellent loudness, and its sound quality is quite good, as long as the songs you listen to don't have too many high frequencies that make it go into tinny territory. Sound through the headphone jack was also pretty good, although in terms of volume, it was a bit below average. This may prevent it from driving higher impedance headphones to sufficient loudness. Still, it's on par for its price, so it shouldn't be held against it. The 3000 mAh battery received a rather mediocre 66 hours of endurance on our battery life tests. Its screen on time actually isn't that bad, but its standby time made a serious dent in its overall score. The phone comes with a 15-watt fast charger that can get you from 0 to 47% in half an hour, and from 0 to fully charged in an hour and 34 minutes. The Moto G7 comes with 4GB of RAM and a Snapdragon 632 chipset. It's weaker than the one in the Plus, but not by a lot. In day-to-day tasks, you'll find the two phones to be on par with one another. Where you might notice a difference is in the speed of the camera app or in games with much heavier graphics. Although, even if the chipset was much weaker, you're dealing with some incredibly clean and light software. The Moto G7 has practically stock Android with zero bloatware. Because of this, the day-to-day experience almost feels like that of a Pixel device. It's pretty much all Google software aside from the Adobe Audio app, the FM radio, and the Motorola app that allows you to tweak some shortcuts and settings. You even get a version of the pill navigation that is just slightly more Motorola. I honestly wish they'd just gone with gestures instead, because once again, you're not really saving screen real estate this way, and gestures as a whole are more intuitive. There's only one thing that's more Moto than Google, and sadly, it's to be expected: the camera app. You can work around this if you download Gcam's APK file and install it. And you'll be able to use Night Sight and some of Google's other software magic even if you're still limited by the hardware itself. This brings me to the dual camera setup. There's a 12-megapixel main shooter and a 5-megapixel depth sensor. In daylight, the Moto G7 has sharp and detailed photos with some noise, but not enough to be an issue. The dynamic range, however, is not amazing, and this will often result in photos that seem overexposed. Colors have just the right amount of pop while being decently close to reality, and the HDR mode saves the pretty bad dynamic range, although it won't work miracles. At night, the poor dynamic range will further limit the capabilities of the Moto G7 even if there is a decent amount of detail. Colors look pretty washed out too. Despite having a depth sensor, the portraits that the G7 takes are only okay, and sometimes it still fails with subject separation. As far as video is concerned, it's not too surprising that this phone does not have the most amazing 4K footage we've ever seen. There are visible compression artifacts, and as with photos, the dynamic range is not impressive. However, colors are still pretty nice and make the scene look more lively. And Full HD videos are better in terms of detail, and at this resolution you get pretty good video stabilization. Just know that while the image might look jittery in the camera app, when you look at the video footage later, you'll see that it's actually been smoothed out. On the front, the Moto G7 has an 8-megapixel selfie camera with an f2.2 aperture, and while at environments you get pretty respectable selfies with good detail and nice skin tones. However, in lower light, images quickly turn soft, while in harsh lighting you'll find some of the highlights being blown out. Selfie portraits have pretty good subject separation, but like on the back, there's no escaping that limited dynamic range. While the Moto G7 is a pretty good phone and isn't bad by any means, you should know that this is not the best bang for your buck out there. There's just too much competition right now. Still, if you're interested because of brand loyalty, you should know that it's a well-rounded and dependable smartphone, and it has plenty to offer, especially if you're willing to forgive the unimpressive 4K video, the mediocre battery life, and the underpowered graphics performance. I think it deserves a recommendation, but with a caveat that you should check out what else is on sale before you buy it. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button down below and subscribe and hit the bell icon to get our latest tech reviews as soon as they're out. See you next time.